Hi, welcome back to another episode of The Lorne Epstein Show. I'm your host, Lorne Epstein. You're listening to 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. Today we have very, very special guests. We are going to be talking about apprenticeships and how they're making a difference in our society. Recently, there was an article in the Washington Post about an apprenticeship program in D.C. that took folks who were working at minimum type wage jobs, gave them some amazing training, and now they're at middle income jobs. And with me today, I have fantastic guests. Mr. Odie Donald. Mr. Odie Donald is a nationally recognized leader in government administration. Odie is responsible for finding employment through government programs. And it's resulted in lots of money being directed to the U.S. economy and careers. Currently, he is the director of the D.C. Department of Employment Services. He has a budget of over $80 million in the District of Columbia, including federal funds, and it's used for workforce development, training, unemployment compensation, universal paid leave, and labor standards enforcement. Odie was in the article, and he's going to talk about that. Odie, welcome to the show.
How you doing? Glad to be here with you today.
Did I capture that right?
I think you did. You're close enough.
Okay. And also with me today, I have folks who got the apprenticeships and were in the article. Chris Brooks. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And Darren, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Darren, tell people what you were doing and now what you're doing.
I was a meat cutter at Safeway for a couple of years and then became unemployed. And I went through DOES and went to welding school, graduated, and they had a LEAP program, and I got into it. And now I'm at DPW, Department of Public Works, welding, working in several shops, the tire shop, light shop, snow repair, plow. So I'm getting a great experience and getting my hands on everything that I can.
Awesome. And can I ask, what's DOES?
Department of Unemployment Services.
Okay. And so how did you know about that department? Like you were working at Safeway and then you weren't working at Safeway, and then how did that come to you?
Well, when I got unemployed and couldn't find work, it's called a one-stop program. One-stop program. And I went in there and asked questions, and I was directed, and I got the help and the resources that I needed, and it just went from there.
How did you know about One Stop?
It's all on a bus stop sign on the metro.
Okay. I think it's really important. We've talked about this before, but that there are culture bubbles around our country where people don't know how to kind of get out of what it is that they're doing to get to do something else. And this bus stop ad kind of moved you on your way.
Correct. It did.
Awesome. And Chris, what were you doing before?
I was an executive assistant for Marriott Hotels, corporate.
Up until when?
Up until about 2005, 2006.
And then what happened?
Once the recession hit, they had a whole bunch of layoffs, and I was one of those. Was unemployed for about 2 to 3 years. Tried to get into anything I could really get into at that time. But a friend of mine let me know about the apprenticeship program through DOES, and I just put in an application and got lucky to get chosen to the top 50, and then from there on just kept going.
Awesome. And what are you doing now?
Right now I am a grade 12 mechanic inspector for FMA, Fleet Management Administration. We actually just worked 12 hours today, so you have to excuse me if I sound a little down.
Yeah.
But, we've been in this since midnight, but we're
Do you need some coffee?
I've had like 7 cups. No more, no. But it's great. I had a great time. I didn't get to do the newspaper article because I was actually on a vacation. I was out in Mexico in Cancun. I was upset. She sent me the picture, and I was like, oh, man, I could have been on the Washington Post, but the fruits of the labor of what I got.
Well, now you're going to be on the Lorne Epstein Show.
Which is even
like
better.
Way better than the Washington Post.
I'm like real media right now.
Yeah, there's like 3 people listening to the show.
Oh, man, a total of 3?
I think maybe 4. It's snowing outside.
I'm sure my aunt's listening. Yeah. Something, I don't know.
So, and they're here at the show, and they've got their, it says DPW.
Yeah, that's DPW.
They got their uniforms on.
The preferred choice.
The preferred choice.
That's us.
Is there another choice?
There are many choices. We are the preferred one.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because you can do a lot of things that will put a lot of DC workers out of work, and they've decided not to. They chose us.
Absolutely.
So there's this program, and we're going to talk about the program and the need. And Odie, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And also, thanks to Tiffany, your assistant, who really kind of pulled this together. She's in the studio. Hi, Tiffany. Thank you. So tell us about the program.
Well, I'll tell you, apprenticeships have been around for a very long time. I think Mr. Brooks is an example of that. He's actually the first automotive apprentice in the first public sector apprenticeship in the region. And for many times and for a long time, it was really based around construction-related activities. And I think what we've done through Apprenticeship DC is open up really anything that is apprenticeable and make sure that people have access to these opportunities. So what our program is something that gives both businesses and residents access to a skilled workforce as well as key skilled opportunities in a variety of areas.
So the program is is it just DC money or is it federal money too?
Well, so we actually mix both, but I think it's a little bit of both. I know you quoted $80 million. We actually have a little bigger budget than that. When you look at our total budget, including our federal funds, we're right around about $160 million. And so that $160 million goes for everything from labor law enforcement, education, training, and specialized programs like this.
But in the apprenticeship program, what's the budget for that?
Well, so we actually lump it all under our workforce program. I think so far we've put about $2 million directly into apprenticeships, but there's also pre-apprenticeships like the LEAP program, which Mr. Williams went through. And so that program is not necessarily a formal registered apprenticeship. We call those pre-apprenticeships, where we get somebody ready to either enter into a formal apprenticeship or directly into a job. And so I think his example is a really good one because he's actually working not only in welding, but in about 3 or 4 different areas around DPW. And once he finishes, he'll really have his choice. Now, I think he kind of seems to lean towards welding, but I think if he wanted to explore something else within the agency, he'd be able to.
And we'll go back and kind of explain the program, but I want to just understand the genesis. When did this start?
Well, so apprenticeships have been along.
But I mean for DC.
Well, it's still.
Apprenticeships are thousands of years old.
Yeah, but so are our registered apprenticeships in the District of Columbia. We are considered a state for workforce development. And so as such, we actually oversee the registered apprenticeship process for the District of Columbia. And so, I mean, this process is probably about 30 to 40 years old.
So for the last 30 or 40 years, you've been taking residents of DC, funding their education to get these jobs.
Absolutely.
And that's what you do. You fund the education.
Well, not just the education. We also fund the work experience as well. I think
so people get a little bit of a stipend.
Thing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the great thing about apprentices is that you're employees from day one. So it's not just training. You actually are going through a customized training effort that you're getting specifically for that job. So in Mr. Brooks' example, he actually is learning specific areas of automotive, and now he's one of the leaders there. But he's been an employee for day one. I think the cool thing that you heard is the reason he wasn't a part of the article is because he was on vacation, because he's a paid employee that can actually take vacation with his benefits. And so that's the beautiful part about apprenticeships is that people enter directly into the workforce and get that specialized training and credentials they need.
So someone finds the program, these guys were saying they found the program, they apply. What has them get selected? What are the criteria?
Well, and so that really depends on the program. I think you have 2 different ones here. You have one that's focused on welding. You have another that's focused on automotive, and construction would be another. We also have hospitality and other areas.
So are there abilities that you test for?
Well, and so it depends. It's all depending on the apprenticeship sponsor. I think if you also read the article, there was another gentleman who was with SecureTech 360, and that's an IT firm. And so he really didn't have anything other than an interest and an aptitude, and the company was able to train him from scratch to where, again, he's one of their leaders in their apprenticeship program now. So I think the biggest thing that we tell DC residents is that if you have an interest and you know what type of industry you want to go in, just come through our doors and we'll help you figure out the rest.
And so someone comes and let's say they know clearly if they're mechanically inclined, there's jobs for them. or if they're interested in IT, there's jobs for them.
Absolutely.
But like you're saying, let's say they don't know what they want to do. So they would go to the office, and then what would happen at the office?
They would sit down. We actually have probably about 65 different professionals who are really focused on making sure we do assessments to find out not only what your interests, your general interests are, but also your aptitude.
Okay, so there is an aptitude kind
There is. Well, and I think there's a combination because some people actually are not necessarily looking for training. They're more interested in work, and they know that our training programs put them to work. But we also have opportunities within the agency to put people directly into employment. And so I think a great example was, I think Mr. Brooks mentioned that he was laid off from his job. And so the great thing about our agency is as the state agency, we oversee unemployment insurance, but we also oversee training. And so when they come in to get their unemployment insurance benefits, they're the easiest people to get back to work because they already have a skill in some area. And so we look at opportunities like these two gentlemen to try to get them into the areas that they're going to be most successful.
So your department actually has access to the folks who they can then put into this program.
Absolutely.
And so how many people go through the program every year, would you say?
Well, so they are currently about 1,300 DC residents who are apprentices right now. The bulk of those are in construction, but then through our pre-apprenticeship program and some of our specialized programs, there are about another 200 in the pipeline that are either entering or part of the pre-apprenticeships or entering into formal apprenticeships once they complete those.
And how long does so those people that are in these two programs, they're being still funded in part by DC government?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when do they leave that funding and then are no longer part of the program?
Well, and so that part depends on the program again. So I think the LEAP program is a great example of that. So most of these LEAP participants are in that program for about a year. And then after that, they move into the permanent employment. But, I mean, we do have many examples just with LEAP by itself where some people are only in the program for about 3 months because they get the work readiness skills that they need and the employer wants them right away. So it's very much employer driven and it really depends. Apprenticeships, formal apprenticeships are different though. Most registered apprenticeships range from around 2 to 4 years and they're not totally funded by us. As a matter of fact, most times we set up the apprenticeship and then companies come in and fund it themselves.
So companies do pay for a bulk, and we'll talk about maybe how the money breaks out. So,
Absolutely.
So, Chris, I'm interested. So when you found the program, are you still in the program?
Oh, no.
You graduated from the
A
program.
long time ago, yes.
Yeah, so how long were you in the apprentice program?
About a year and a half. I didn't even make my full 2 years.
And then you graduated and you were a full-time employee?
Correct. Full permanent employee, yes.
Full-time. And so before then you were getting paid a wage?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that wage was funded by the government as well as your employer?
Correct.
And you got all the training you needed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. They sent us to college and everything, yeah.
And what'd you think of the program?
I loved it. Top to bottom, everything about it. Like Miss Samuels, who got me in, and Miss Harris, who's helping me through it now, helping me, help the new guys that are coming in.
Sure.
Beautiful program.
And did you go to college?
I did for a couple of years, Ohio State.
And you're obviously you're a high school graduate.
Yes.
In hindsight,
yes.
Going back in hindsight, would you have done anything different? If you knew this program was available, you had your college choice, you graduated high school, what would you have done?
Oh, absolutely. I would have done this first.
You would have done this first
But,
and skipped college completely?
Completely. Absolutely.
And why is that?
Well, first of all, when I joined the apprenticeship program, I got paid $17 an hour to train and learn to be able to have a career in a trade. At Ohio State, I owed them $15,000 to learn math algorithms that don't make any sense, And that's just me. College is great for some, but,
Sure. Yeah.
Just looking back at it now, if I could have joined the apprenticeship at 18 as opposed to 22, 23, who knows where I would be now,
Right.
I'd be 3, 4, 5 years ahead of the game.
And less in debt or whatever you had.
Absolutely, yes. But they're paid off now. They're happy.
Thanks.
The job gave me that too, so thank you. Yes.
So my dad was a teacher in New York City in a vocational high school. And maybe 6 years ago, one of his students got a hold of me on LinkedIn, and she found me because when I was born, my dad put my name on like a bulletin board, and the name stuck. Lorne is a unique name. So she said, "Are you the son of Martin Epstein?" I said, "Yes." She says, "Well, he taught me when I was in high school at Mabel Dean Bacon in New York City." And she still uses a lot of the things that she learned vocationally in her life. And they taught, nursing skills, secretarial skills, merchandising skills that were of value. And I think what's really important for us as a society now, and why I wanted to do, we've done a few shows on co-ops and also cooperatives, but also on the skills gap, is that there are a lot of folks in the country who were just completely left behind by the educational system. It just does not serve them. After college, even during college, they got no value. And so if they can't get employed in the jobs that employers need, employers are not going out and training people. We need the government, to step in and bridge this gap, create this, because they're the only ones that can fund this and have an interest in funding this, to make this happen for people, particularly in jobs that are like they're not going to get you anywhere. They're not going to allow you to have a home or a family or any kind of sense of stability. And these jobs are needed.
Yeah, not I mean, and the really big part of it, especially in the mechanic field and even in the welding field, there's a huge generational just void of where.
I want to talk about that. We're going to take a quick break and come right back, and I want to hear about that. So you've been listening to the Lorne Epstein Show here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Lorne Epstein, and you're listening to The Lorne Epstein Show, where we talk about jobs, careers, and the workplace, here on 96.7 FM. If you're interested in being on the show, you can give me a call at 240-876-0276 or email me at Lorne, Lorne, at electriccow.com. You can check out our Facebook page, which is Lorne Epstein, and also our Mixcloud account. So if you go to mixcloud.com, Lorne Epstein, you'll find our shows. Thanks so much. Welcome back to the Lorne Epstein Show. You're listening to 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. And we're talking to Odie Donald and Chris Brooks and Darren Williams about the apprenticeship programs in D.C. And you were just saying about the age.
Yeah, in the mechanic field especially, also in the welding field, and really just as tradesmen, there's a huge generational void where a lot of people back in the 70s got into being into trades because they couldn't afford to go to college. And then as college became more of a needed thing for our generation, a lot of our kids went and did that route. But there's nobody that really filled the gap as to who's going to be the mechanics for the next 15, 20 years. So
what's the age range difference? What's between the oldest of your group versus the youngest of the group above you?
The oldest of my group would probably be me. I'm like 34. Wow. So, I'm the oldest of like the younger guys that are there. But 80% of our workforce easily late 50s, early 60s.
So that's like 20-year plus.
Yes. So when they decide to retire, which will be soon, I'm an inspector. So there are 5 inspectors currently.
Right.
Out of the 5, 3 of them could put their paperwork in tomorrow and retire if they wanted to.
So here in Arlington County, we can't find firemen, policemen, and EMS workers. And I know that the people that run the water for Arlington County, there are no young people doing that. So if you're listening to this show and you want to do water engineering, you can be employed.
Yeah.
So speak to that component, Odie, about this. Why was this important? Why did DC get involved with this 30, 40 years ago? What's their viewpoint for the future on this?
Well, so I think, Mr. Brooks made a great point that, 30, 40 years ago, this was just really the order of business and how things got done. I think while we're revisiting it now is because there is really a need, not only on those young folks like Mr. Brooks, but also for people who are not able to retire or who are re-entering the workforce. When you look at IT, I think the gentleman that we highlighted is 22 years old, but there's another gentleman on the opposite end of that spectrum who is 60 plus years old.
Right.
And so in some of these apprenticeable areas, there's not necessarily an age limit because the work is more so based on your aptitude and your skill as well as your overall interest. And so for us, it is a standardized way to ensure that DC residents get to earn while they learn and then enter into demand occupations. And so it's a no-brainer to use our resources in an area that's going to get you great performance, where you get these guys making a great wage, enjoying the type of work that they do, and having upward mobility. And at the same time, for us, it's not going to cost us any more or not much more than just sending somebody to a 2-year institution to be able to get their credential without the work experience.
Sure, and people who are more employed are more educated, more engaged.
Absolutely.
And that
Absolutely.
saves money in all sorts of ways.
Well, and
They
it
won't
also
ever-
produces money.
And
I
it
mean,
produces money, taxes, right?
Absolutely. I think the mayor under Mayor Bowser's administration, this is just one of the areas, and she has doubled the number of apprentices since entering office. That's a big deal for us.
Double them
because so it was at about 600. Now we're over 1,300. So more than double.
That's great.
The number
And this
of
has been the
DC
last 2 years.
apprentices. Well, about 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah. So we're approaching 3. But I think the cool thing about that is when you look at all of our activities and all of our workforce activities, more than $831 million is going back into the tax base because of guys
That's a great
like
question.
Mr.
So I wanted to
Williams.
ask that. How much do you think it cost to get that $831 back? What's the return on investment
Well,
for
I
every
mean,
dollar that you spend?
Well, and so I think what we're looking at, the ROI is about $2.50 return to every one. And you can just look at our budget and look at that. I mean, if it's
I don't think you're getting that anywhere these days.
Oh, not at all. No, I think the workforce system, and so while DC, we're kind of ahead of the curve and moving this thing forward. If you look nationally, the workforce system is turning out those type of numbers, and so the best part about what we're doing here is it's all employer led. So that's the good part about apprenticeships, about LEAP, about all of these work-based learning activities is we start with the employer, we find out what they need, and then we marry it to our residents. And so we're now keeping those dollars that, I'd say a DPW or Pepco or Washington Gas and some of our other partners, we are now keeping those dollars in the district. And now our residents can buy a house and take vacation and, enjoy their lives, very similar to what these gentlemen pointed out.
So, Darren, let me ask you, how was the program for you when you got in?
It's wonderful. It's great. It has a lot of things to offer besides just having a job, basic things to survive, such as in the LEAP program, we have Touch Point Monday, once a month, where we could go and learn about CPR, defensive driving, financial, how to do investments, how to get your credit right, how to even buy a house like they were just talking about, and going back to school. So it's a lot of opportunity.
That's great.
I love it. You get a uniform, you come home, your son is happy, family, you feel good about yourself. Hands-on with tools that I've received.
So let me ask you about that. So you've become handier with tools.
Oh, yes.
Are you doing anything at home with that?
Oh, yeah.
What did you do at home with the
You
skills?
can fix cars now.
Have you fixed your own car?
Doing brakes, doing a lot of stuff.
And for friends and family?
You try not to, but once you have to.
And for your favorite radio host?
Of course. Always.
Just a discount, though.
For me, learning how to work on the CDL trucks, the dump trucks. I got my CDL, so I can go upstairs and learn all of the components, how to change it. I can also do the hydraulic systems now, and then I go over to the welding shop. But, for me, it's just been an avenue of different shops. And we got about 6-7 shops.
7 shops, yeah.
So, the old-timers, they got a lot of advice. They can help you. It's just wonderful. I love it. And I would really say, DC is really doing their thing. Even as you heard him say Pepco, I had a friend that I told that they were having a Pepco event. He got into it. He's just waiting for a call back from Pepco. So it's a lot of things. And for me, myself, getting my CDL through DC.
So your CDL, your
commercial driver's license. I got that through DC, my welding license, my HVAC license. So it's so many things that you can obtain and get, and then you find out a year later it was worth it. Because now my heating and air conditioning license, we got to do refrigeration in the cars, heating and air in the cars, welding, brakes.
So in the train cars, or in the bus cars, it's a trains,
dump truck,
in the dump trucks,
in the dump trucks.
And so, did you went to high school?
Yes.
Did you graduate?
I graduated. Didn't go to college. Didn't want to go to college.
Did you know that you were mechanically inclined?
No, I didn't think I was, because actually I took a test for the union for apprenticeship and, took it about 5 or 6 times and never, achieved it.
And you were never handy at home? You never figured out pick up a screw? No, so it was an untapped skill. that clearly you have an aptitude for.
And now, I can get a wrench, get a piece of metal, a bar, and take a lug nut off, and you be like, well, I should have thought of that. I could have did it myself.
Mm-hmm. And you can weld.
Yes, I can weld.
What kind of welding can you do?
Structural, vertical, horizontal.
So I met a guy who was a welder after
Pipe
Katrina.
welder.
And I was telling these guys, after Katrina, a bunch of folks came up to the D.C. Armory to stay, shelter. And I was helping them get jobs. And one guy who was a welder said that he was making about $150,000 a year as a welder, which is it's a great salary.
Yeah, it's easy. Sometimes you got to travel to get it. But, yeah, definitely.
And do you see yourself having a career in what you're doing?
Yes.
That's great.
So I think that's the coolest thing about specifically these two gentlemen is that while we're excited to have them here in the district and we don't want them going anywhere, if they ever wanted to, they actually have not only developed skills, but they have the credentials. I think you heard him mention his CDL. That means that he can take that anywhere in the world. I was going to say in the U.S., but really anywhere in the world. The ability to weld is something that is needed. That's a global skill. And so these folks aren't just entering into the DC workforce, they're leading it. They've got essential skills that, will help kind of create where we're going in the future, not just at DPW, but just in the District of Columbia. And so that's a really big deal.
So on your end, Odie, is there a shortage of employers, a shortage of people, a shortage of jobs, or is everything good?
I really think it's neither. I would say what has been missing for a very long time, and I think we've been focused on, is really connecting the dots.
Yeah.
So you look at our recent investment in the Infrastructure Academy, the reason is because there are 6,000 openings that were in infrastructure last year.
In D.C.?
In D.C., not Greater Washington, in the District of Columbia, that went unfilled.
Wow. That's like 1% of the population.
That's a big deal. And when you look at that, you also have people who are looking for these low barrier to entry jobs that pay well.
Yeah.
And so all of these issues and all of these opportunities, we're just kind of connecting them. I think you heard Mr. Williams say, well, he couldn't get into the apprenticeship program through trying, but another door was open for him, and now he was able to walk into it. And, being frank, he's actually probably a little bit ahead of some of our other apprentices because he'll be leaving and entering into the same door in less time. I think Mr. Brooks is a great example of what happens on the formal apprenticeship route and how that process can kind of help you lead into management and leadership roles. But both are valuable, and I don't think either one of them are upset with their paychecks right now. So, I think making sure that all of the doors that are available to our residents are open at the same time so that they can pick the best one for them.
So I want to get back to the question of where maybe the gaps are, but I want to ask. So you don't have to tell me how much you're making, but what was the difference in a percentage or an amount between your job before and your job now?
Oh wow, God. I'd say a paycheck at Marriott, I got about maybe $850, and that was maybe every 2 weeks. Maybe I would clear $1,000 if I did overtime. And as an apprentice, I would say probably about 11. So that was just starting out. Mm-hmm. But now I'm at almost about like 15. So
right, so almost twice as much.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah, and would you say about the same?
Being a butcher was a little bit more, but I'm an elite. But I'm not in apprenticeship like he was.
But it made a huge difference.
But the knowledge that I'm getting in the hands-on is irreplaceable to me, in my opinion.
That's the priceless part.
You can't go anywhere and say, hey, you got a uniform. Hey, I want you to take and do this job by yourself, and you've been given all the tools. You come to work. You're dealing with the snap-on tool that we have now. Yeah. It's almost $8,000, and I can go use it with no problem. Same thing that BMW uses. I can use that now. So
you love the exposure to all these things.
I love it.
Well, Mr. Williams is still in the training program, he's probably
seen
a slight bump.
How far are you into the program?
It begin ready to come up on a year. I mean, my paycheck is real decent. I can't put it out on the radio because somebody calls hey, can I borrow some money? But
but it's really nice, like listening to it because so
Darren's friends, he doesn't have money for you. Yeah. Don't bother.
The holidays.
Get your own job.
I can't say that, but yes.
Get an apprenticeship.
Yeah,
so, have you gotten any of your friends' apprenticeships?
Tried. It's not that easy.
Why?
Like there's a process. So like when I first went through, and this was way back, they put 50 guys in a room, trained them to a certain extent, weekly tests, weekly courses, like things like that, in different modules and sections, and only the top 10 actually got hired.
I see. So people who actually couldn't cut it,
right? There's
didn't get the job.
Very like staggered weaning processes that they go through it. So
that was your experience too, Darren?
I got in. I tell my friends all the time, if I see a bulletin or posting, I tell them, like I told them about the Pepco, and my friend passed it, so he's just waiting on a phone call. I think, you have to, in a position that I'm in right now, and I see stuff the same way I got all this stuff, so I have to be willing to share it. So it's my job. That guy didn't see it on the Metro bus, I might have to tell them where to go to, and that's what I do now.
And what percentage of people that come into the program come in through these kinds of referrals?
So, that's a good question. It really does depend. I think we looked at FY17 was really the first time that we really looked at that. And what we were seeing is of our successful participants, about 40% of them refer somebody to us for services.
Yeah.
What we can't measure, though, or we haven't been able to measure yet, is how many of those folks go into a particular program. And so Mr. Williams might refer somebody. So he's speaking of a program that's not an apprenticeship program. We call it Quick Path to Energy. And so it's to get people up to snuff so that they can pass the CAS test, which is the entry point to get those utility jobs. And so while it's not a formal apprenticeship, it is an opportunity for somebody in less than 10 weeks to be able to pass the test and get into one of those opportunities. Big amount, though, of people are starting to access our programs.
How many folks would you say?
Well, I wouldn't want to say a number right now because it's not as tangible to capture. Because what we do is not only do we take people and put them into our programs, we've got partners like UDC. So you may refer somebody to us to get training, but it may be more appropriate for them to be served at UDC, or it may be more appropriate for them to partner with our DHS partners through TANF or whatnot.
So do you have enough jobs?
I think we do, yeah.
Do you have enough people?
I think we do. We always want more, though.
So you want more people?
Absolutely.
And do you want more
DC
employers?
residents, of course.
Okay, so the pipeline that you have, so people understand the kind of the scale of this, is that the number of people that are applying through your programs, some percentage of them are getting through and becoming workers.
Correct.
Right? Is it do you need more people to push through because there are jobs being left unfilled?
Well, again, I wouldn't want to frame it that way. I don't think that's appropriate
how
way
would
to
you
frame it. I would say last year we served over, or in the short time period of the administration, served over 100,000 people.
100,000 people since?
Absolutely.
Since when?
Since Mayor Bowser came into office.
So almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years. Through that time period, there are about 40,000 people who have found employment.
100,000 people, that's a huge. There's 620 or 30,000 people in D.C.
Absolutely, that's a lot of people. But
and are these
also
all D.C. residents?
Absolutely, we only serve D.C. residents.
Wow.
And so you're also having people, though, that kind of come and go from D.C. from various reasons.
Sure.
And some of these people are coming to us, again, not just for job training. Some of them already have the skill that they need, and they may have been laid off somewhere else or relocating because their husband or wife. There are a variety of different reasons. And so what I would say is that there are still, DC's economy is booming.
Yeah.
And so there are a ton of opportunities.
What's the unemployment
that
rate
are
now
going.
in DC?
Oh, goodness. It is the lowest it's been ever. I don't know.
Like
off
just
the top
under
of
4?
my head. Well, it is actually, I think, at 5 point. Yeah, it's at about. I don't want to say the exact number because the numbers actually come out on Tuesday. So we'll wait until they come down because I think we're going to see.
Well, this show won't air for a
jump.
while. So if you say it'll be like in the history.
Oh, really? It won't air for a while?
No.
Well, and that may even make it worse because if it changes a little bit, I don't want to mention it.
Okay,
but what I will say
is
that it's down about 1.1%. We're going to see a slight spike, though, because people are re-entering the workforce. That's why I'm a little cautious to say we don't have a large enough workforce because a
we
while
don't have a
ago,
large enough workforce in D.C.
Yeah, to say that is not necessarily appropriate. I would say that there were about 25,000 people that were considered unemployed. But those are the people who are actually accessing our services and actively looking for work. As you hear more stories like Mr. Brooks and Mr. Williams, you've got people who were not engaged with the system, not looking for work, who had given up, who are now re-entering. And so that adjusts the unemployment rate a little bit, but that's because those people are entering back into the workforce and they're confident. And so we have to also create opportunities for those long-term unemployed folks to be able to enter into these types of opportunities. I'd also say that there are new businesses. I think you heard about Yelp, who recently relocated here. In addition to Yelp, you've got a bunch of companies that are growing. You've seen that Pepco has a new line of business. DC Water has really been kind of modernizing the way that they operate, so they've been a great partner. Even the hotel chains are booming. You see what's going on at the wharf, so there's so many different new opportunities. And I mean, DC residents are not only resilient, but very skilled in a variety of different ways. So while we've got a ton of jobs and a ton of people who need them, again, the key thing that we're worried about is making sure that we connect the two in the same way that we did with these gentlemen who are happy with the opportunities that they have.
Well, I think that what you're saying captures the problem for the country and the world, is that there are jobs. We have this, the unemployment number, for those who are listening, is not just one number. There's the U1, the U2, the U3. It's kind of a funky number, but
you've been reading up on unemployment, I see.
Oh, I've been doing this for a long time. I mean,
it's a good deal.
Anyway, the point is that there are people who are not working and want jobs, and there are jobs who don't have people. And so how do we bridge the gap? And what you said about connecting the dots, I think, is spot on, because employers aren't writing good job descriptions. They're not actually saying this is the kind of person we need. They're asking for people that they don't really exist. And people don't know how to get there. They're in these bubbles. Like, the only way you found out was through a sign on a bus. Like, had you not taken that bus, you'd still be doing, right? So I mean, great that it worked out for you, but that is not an efficient way to create a talent pipeline, which is what businesses need to do, is create these pipelines where people can, entire populations can come in, people that are in school, from elementary school, and start figuring out maybe what it is that they want to do along the way, so that when they leave high school, that they're, going on to the right job or the right path for them. Either it's high school or rather college or trade school. When I was young and when we were younger, there were a lot more trade schools. In New York, there was always advertisements for technical colleges and, a year or 6 months of how to be an HVAC technician.
And it's not there anymore. And I believe a lot of the tests and stuff to get into, a lot of the apprenticeships like those for like the unions and stuff, where they used to go put a triangle in a triangle, they don't do that anymore. So they make it difficult, and some people just get discouraged. But here, I found that, if you need help, it's so many things that they offer that is just unbelievable. Even from the support of being at DPW, from my supervisor, Ms. Harris, my other supervisor, Mr. Marshall, you have to have that support system.
And you feel like these people are acting as mentors as well.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, even if I'm having an issue or concern or question, they're there to help out. They really want to see you strive.
Right. We're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be back in just a minute. Hi, I'm Lorne Epstein. Every week I talk about jobs and careers on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia, at 10 a.m. Mondays. Welcome back. You're listening to The Lorne Epstein Show. I'm your host, Lorne Epstein, here on 96.7. We are doing a show on apprenticeships, and with me today I have Odie Donald from the District of Columbia and Mr. Chris Brooks and Mr. Darren Williams, who have gone through these apprenticeship programs. So, Darren, what would you tell people listening about the program? Chris, would you tell people about the program who are listening to the program about? I was looking at the wrong guy.
It's okay. My name is kind of covered. It's all right.
What would you tell employers about the program? Like, what would be your pitch for people listening to this? Taxpayers, people who are looking to hire people who are looking for work.
Ideally, you are building from the ground up the perfect employee for whatever business that you're trying to run. You get to frame the entire path that they take from the beginning to mold to whatever your brand is or whatever it is that you want your workforce to kind of message or mission to be. And then as soon as they get to the point where they're ready to contribute, they already know exactly what it is that you expect of them.
I love that. That's awesome. That is really great.
It's a great program.
Right. Companies, employers, you get to build the kind of person you want, and you have people like Odie who are there with money. Thank you, Odie, to support them, and not just the money, but the whole program, the whole system.
Right.
So if a company wants to go through, wants to participate, and they're not already participating, how do they do that?
So the first thing is, of course, they just give us a call and contact DOES. But there are 3 different ways.
And can we give a phone number?
Yeah, we will. It is, and I'll give it to you in just a second. Once we finish this, I'll pull it up and make sure we have the right one. But the first thing is we have an apprenticeship council that walks, and our team, of course, our apprenticeship team, walks people through becoming a registered apprenticeship sponsor, very similar to what we described for DPW. Also, if companies want to post jobs with us, they're able to do that through our job bank, which is, very easy to do also.
But posting a job is not necessarily going through the apprenticeship program.
Well, it's not. But first, the registered apprenticeship program, again, we assist with we assist them in becoming a registered apprenticeship sponsor. So they would, we start with their job descriptions, their openings, and what they want to make apprenticeable. And so providing us with those details helps us lead them down the correct path. And so again, the Office of Apprenticeship and Training helps them to develop their apprenticeship standards. They can also post jobs with us in our work-based learning programs. We look at every job that they have available and identify programs that we can connect them to help subsidize their offering and encourage them to hire DC residents, which is very similar to the LEAP program, except for that one is aligned with government openings.
So I know the gentleman who was in the article who was in the IT. He got his training through a private commercial firm.
Yes, correct.
And that was paid for by DC government.
It was. And again, they're a registered apprenticeship sponsor.
Right. So they're an educational, they provide education.
No, they're a private company, and his apprenticeship. So an apprenticeship means that.
Oh, he didn't just learn there; he was getting the job.
Absolutely,
okay.
Yeah. Apprenticeship is not just learning; it is class-based and work-based learning. So they're getting both at the same time.
So what's the cash split or what's the investment split? Is there a general ratio?
There is not. It depends. It's
All
each
depends.
done on each individual, not only each individual sponsor, but also by industry and position. Because we actually look, I'll give you an example. So for Mr. Brooks, for the role that he's in and the experience that he's come in, the training plan that's developed for him would actually determine how much we pay. And so let's say Mr. Brooks already had 3 years of automotive maintenance experience, and so we would only pay for a certain period of that because he would get his aptitude a lot quicker than, let's say, Mr. Williams, who had no experience at all. And so it's based on a federal formula that we kind of borrow from and use in our local programs as well.
And when they're in the apprenticeship program, they're employees of
the company.
The company. And you're giving the company money, and then the company is passing that money along to their.
Well, I wouldn't say they're passing it along. I mean, it offsets the cost of training.
Okay.
And so there is a cost of training anyone. And so if we have to pay to train somebody, it's really no difference if you train them. And so, again, we use that federal model, which is similar to the on-the-job training, where we pay for a certain amount for a certain period of time, which offset their cost of training them. But ultimately, they are employees of the company from day one.
And aside from the cash they get, do they get any tax breaks or any other incentives?
Well, I mean, depending on the program, there are a bunch of different incentives that are available. I think the biggest benefits to companies, though, is that they have a standardized way of training and onboarding that they don't have to actually do themselves. Right. We help them standardize that process, and we offset the cost of training.
What Chris was saying, making the people that they want to make.
Absolutely.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Not only for companies, though, industries can also access it. So if the entire medical industry or a group of hospitals, per se, wanted to come together to actually standardize, let's say registered nurses would be a horrible idea, but maybe intake personnel, then we could actually help them develop standards so that these 3 to 4 hospitals could actually access that at the same time. So there are a bunch of different benefits because it also helps to alleviate competition and, purging from one company to the next when we can kind of help industries as a whole through this process.
Which is very common. That since companies, they don't want to train people, they'll just steal people from another company.
Absolutely.
But now they don't have to do that. So if you're a company in D.C. and you're listening to this, honestly, if you're a company anywhere and you're listening to this, you should go to your local government and you could say, hey, we need to fix this. Now, is there any kind of federal money that gets blended into that?
It is.
And what's the federal program that's, if somebody
so we do them all under the same program. And so we don't like to necessarily separate the two. So apprenticeships, we do apprenticeships and we fund them both locally and federally. I think that's why we're having the impact that we're having.
But what does the federal money come out of? DOL? Department of Labor?
Yes. So, not necessarily. I mean, we also have some grants as well. So it really just depends. I think when you look at LEAP, the pre-apprenticeship program, that's a local one, but we also partner with DHS, which is both locally and federally funded as well. Our registered apprenticeship funding does come out of USDOL, and our apprenticeship DC money, again, is blended from a grant from USDOL that doesn't have as many of the federal restrictions as well as our local supplement.
So, I think you have an advantage being in Washington, D.C., understanding the grant writing program, understanding all these agencies, understanding where the money's coming from. Do you think that made a difference in funding this?
I think it's helped us, but I think what's also helped us is looking at other models in other states that are also similar. So I'm sure you can hear it from the country in my voice. I'm a Georgia boy, and so we actually down there, we actually had applied for a USDOL grant for about $4 million. And so it is very similar. But I think also Washington State had a quality apprenticeship program that we looked at. We looked at some of our neighboring states as well. I think there's a strong construction apprenticeship framework, specifically in Maryland with Brandon Butler over there and what they're doing. So we've looked everywhere in the nation on the best ways to come up with creative ways to help D.C. residents. And so our apprenticeship model really looks, depending on what pair of glasses you have on, it looks a lot like other states. It just depends on which area. When you look at construction, I think, D.C. was probably doing that better than anybody else. When it looked at outreach and branding, we looked at Georgia. We looked at the state of North Carolina because they have some strong automotive programming. So I think, we've looked everywhere to figure out the best way to do it.
And if one of the county board members from Arlington is listening, or the county manager, is there like a repository, a book, a paper, a place where they can go and kind of figure this out?
So I'll tell you, on our website in January, we will have our apprenticeship playbook online, and so hopefully other states can use that to help build theirs. But I will say in Arlington, you've got Dave Remick over there. He's a pretty innovative guy who's leading on the local level. I think D.C. is kind of considered a state, so we're a little different. But Mr. Remick over at the Alexander Arlington board, well, we are for this purpose, and I think what we're doing is leading amongst other states. So I'd call us one. But yeah, I think Arlington.
For those who are listening and don't know, the District of Columbia does not have a congressional representative that has voting rights. But other than that,
we do have a representative.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, this is a big deal for me. I think you guys should have some type of representation.
You wouldn't get us to disagree with you at all on that.
So if they wanted to go to the website, what's the website?
dc.does.gov is the website, and you asked for that number earlier, and I apologize, I didn't say it right away, but 202-671-1900
so that's 202-671-1900 to get a hold of the DC folks who are running this program.
Absolutely, yeah. We have an apprenticeship office that is one that is very good, and it sits under our workforce bureau, and so they could ask for either one and be able to access all of this information.
So, Darren, is there anything else you'd like to share with people about the value of this program that we haven't already covered?
Oh, man, it's a lot of stuff. So he was in the apprenticeship. I'm in a pre-apprenticeship. By getting in the program, I have...
What's the difference between pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship? Because we didn't cover that.
You want me to take that one?
Yeah, I'll let you take that
So
one.
apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship it fits under the federal requirements and has a variety of standards that have to be applied to the program. And so it doesn't necessarily impact Mr. Williams or Mr. Brooks, but it does their companies. It also determines what type of funding that they're eligible for. Pre-apprenticeship is a little bit different because it combines, and it really is specific to industry or job, where it combines the level of work-based learning versus educational learning. It's not as standard as apprenticeship, neither is it as long. So it gives them the entry-level skills to get into the fields that they want, whereas apprenticeship is more standard, and it actually leads to higher levels like journeyman and things of that nature, terms that I'm sure you've heard before.
So, what the difference is, even though I'm in the elite program, pre-apprenticeship, I'm getting paid while I'm learning, health insurance to be able to take care of me and my son. I'm also able to get a couple of hours, every 80 hours I work, I get a couple of hours that if I had to use or call in, I'm able to use it. So it has its benefits.
As like sick time or vacation time.
Yeah. So, it has a lot to offer. The program is just great, hands-on with tools, state-of-the-art, stuff that's coming out that some companies don't even have or offer. And the downside to it, let's just say they cut the program off. I now have all the tools, hands-on, that I can go apply what I've learned here at DPW somewhere else. So actually, I'm even more better. It's like having it's like having a running back who can throw the football, be a wide receiver, play linebacker. I'm ready to go. I can go anywhere. I have different opportunities, different doors that I can open now. CDL, welding, hands-on, changing brakes, tire shop, So it's very good. It's a lot that DC has to offer, and even from walking into the one-stop center, the lady that I had, Ms. Boykins, was very helpful even till I got into the program. She was always calling me, giving me job leads. Darn, here's something. It might not be what you want, but it can lead to that. So, it's been a great experience, and I tell anybody that's listening, go to your one-stop center, register, look and see what's out there. Don't be afraid. And I think the biggest thing is some people are afraid of change because you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
I was doing something for 13 years. I knew it. I could do it with my eyes closed. And then going into something different sometimes can be scary. But with the crew that I had, they were very supportive. My supervisors, like I say, Ms. Hurst, Mr. Marshall, Chrissy, just being able to ask anybody questions and get help. They really put a lot into it.
Well said. Chris, what was your biggest epiphany while you've been through this program? The biggest, aha moment?
My biggest aha moment, in actuality, it just all happened so slowly over time that I couldn't really pick out a pinpoint, but something that, Darren said about the opportunity is, and I guess this could actually be a specific moment. You get into an apprenticeship to learn a trade, which is awesome.
So we're running out of time. So
yes, I'm really concise. So I'm a mechanic by trade. I can do that with ease. But I've ventured out now, and I'm the vice president of my union. So it's something else that is in my life now, where I'm looking at law and things like that are kind of opening up different doors for me as I move forward. And this is just in the first 7 years. So it can go anywhere. You start at one point, and then you can end up anywhere. It's really limitless.
That's fantastic. So, Odie, if people want to get a hold of you, is there a way they can reach out to you?
Well, those numbers again are
Best
really
way?
the best, but I'd also say that each of these gentlemen mentioned the one-stop centers. We've got 4 strategically located around the district. Actually, 2 east of the river. Where unemployment and opportunities are needed the most. And I think we really want people to access those centers and access these programs programs. They're available at every center. And while we are trying to take this unemployment rate even lower under the 6.6%, we also want to make sure that the 4,200 jobs that just got added to the district last month are filled with D.C. residents.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming to the show. I wish both of you, Darren, Chris, a great career. And Odie, thank you for doing this public service. I think the D.C. government's doing great work. You've been listening to The Lorne Epstein Show. I'm your host, Lorne Epstein. You're listening to 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week here at 10 a.m. on Mondays.